Hello, boys and girls. This is a quick review of reproduction. I hope you use it at home and help you out. First, to start with, reproduction is organisms go through reproduction to produce more members of their species. Organisms either reproduce sexually, which the genetics or DNA come from two parents, usually a male and a female, and there's possible that they're asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction, and there's only all the genetic material comes from one parent in asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction relies on mitotic cell division. Single-celled organisms like bacteria, amoeba, paramecium are all sexually reproducing. And some examples, here's our yeast. Okay, spin that around, shouldn't be spun around like that. Not sure why this is doing that. Okay, our yeast, it buds. Our hydra buds, a little hydra, starts mitotically dividing, mitotically dividing, mitotically dividing, and then it grows into a little hydra and we get a new hydra. We also have little organisms. Here's our paramecium, amoeba, bacteria, divide through asexual reproduction. We're going to see our little buddy in a few weeks, this guy, a planarium, who can reproduce by regeneration, where we split them in half. But we're going to get back to mitosis. Mitosis can be used by multicellular organisms like us, like a hydra, like a mouse, like plants, for growth, development, okay, repair, like healing a wound, all right? And of course, many organisms use it for reproduction. Now, what is mitosis? We take a cell, if you have a cell, like a skin cell in your body, okay? Our skin cells have 46 chromosomes in it. Remember the phases of mitosis, interphase, prophase. What's an important step that occurs? We have the replication in the first phase. We got to replicate the chromosomes. And then we go through the phases, right? Metaphase, they line up in the middle, all right? Then they go to anaphase, the chromosomes get pulled apart, and then eventually we end up with two daughter cells, identical in chromosome number to the parent cell. All right, and these are daughter cells. Remember, they are identical to each other genetically, and they are genetically identical to the parent. They're just slightly smaller. Okay, so if you have a skin cell that goes through mitosis, you end up with two cells that are identical. All right. The only reason I'm bigger than somebody is because I have more cells. Think about this, how many times this occurred since you were a zygote, over and over and over. Now, cloning is a form of asexual reproduction that can happen in mammals. And remember, we take the organism we want to clone, a body cell, maybe a skin cell, and if it was a human, we'd have 46 chromosomes. We would take that nucleus out, and what would we need? We would need an egg cell from a female, and that egg cell would have 23 chromosomes. We would enucleate it. That would mean take out those 23. We don't want it. That's trash. Boom. We don't want to get rid of that. So now we have a blank enucleated cell. We take that enucleated cell and we insert those 46 chromosomes from our desired clone. We then implant that. Well, first we give it a little zap. Remember, we were talking about a little zap, a little boop, little electric zap, and maybe some hormones, some chemicals. And then we get it to mitotically divide. All right? So it comes 2, 4, 6, 8. Once that thing is dividing, we need to implant into a uterus of a woman and eventually it'll turn into a baby, but that baby will be the clone of this person over here from that cell we started with. Now, if this person's 20 years old that we started with, this baby's not going to be 20 years old. It's going to be a baby, but it'll be genetically identical. It won't be like that person. The personalities will be different, but it'll probably have similar intelligence. The way everything it looks will be identical. It'll just be 20 years younger. Now, sexual reproduction, which we need to get to, involves a process of cell division called meiosis. Remember, meiosis, see if I spell it right, is for the creation of egg and sperm. Oh boy. Nothing like an interruption. Okay. Now, in meiosis, let's go back to my meiosis. Oh, that's not it. Where is my meiosis diagrams? Let's see if I can find them. Nothing like... Here we go. In meiosis, we have a body cell, or whatever it is, okay, of this organism. And here we have 8 chromosomes. They're homologous chromosomes. Remember, the lighter colored ones, the green ones, are maybe from mom. The blue ones are from dad. We have pairs of chromosomes, one from mom, one from dad. First thing they have to do is go through replication. We replicate those chromosomes. Then they get, and during, what's the important thing during that time, we have that crossing over that occurs where they hug each other and kind of exchange their genes. They shuffle them up or recombine them. So you never have 2 gametes that are ever exactly alike. And then they're randomly distributed to these 2 cells. And they're random again, okay? So we end up with gametes that are half the chromosome number of the normal body cell. Now, this species, whatever it is, will sexually reproduce with another member of the species that would have a gamete with 4 chromosomes, square, circle, oval, all right? Triangle, I already got that there, all right? And they'd unite, reestablishing the 8 chromosomes of that organism. All right? Now, let's get into body structures for sexual reproduction, especially in humans. Where is it? Oh boy, I used to have those structures all set for us to look at, and here it is. Okay, so we remember meiosis here in the testes. It's going to produce sperm through the process of meiosis. If this is human, we're going to have 23 chromosomes in the male. I'm not going to write that out. The sperm are produced. They go through this tube, the vas deferens. Okay, they come through here. The prostate adds fluid for the sperm to swim in, leaves the penis, goes into the female. Of course, the penis is inside the female, and the sperm will swim to the egg, which I'll show you in a minute. Remember, if someone wants to, you have a medical procedure where we could cut the vas deferens. That would be a vasectomy. All right. This structure here is the urinary bladder. The 2 do not mix. Okay, when a man has a enlarged prostate or prostate cancer, remember that tightens around that tube there, and obviously that tube is shared for a man to urinate or to release semen, so that can be a very tough time. If someone gets older and they have an enlarged prostate or prostate cancer, it's very tough to urinate. So the sperm comes out. It's going to travel up here. Remember, at the same time, if 2 people are trying to get pregnant, the woman will release an egg through ovulation at the end of 60 days. In the fallopian tubes, the sperm and the egg will unite through the process of fertilization. The egg, after it's been fertilized, will travel down the fallopian tubes. Remember, this is now called a zygote, that first cell. Then it keeps dividing mitotically. The cells are all the same. A woman, during that time, will also build up her uterine lining, preparing for the implantation of this ball of cells. And once that's happened, remember, that becomes fertilized. Chemical signals are sent to the uterus telling the uterus not to go through menstruation. We want this to be protected. If that cell is not fertilized, a woman will go through menstruation every month. Okay? And once again, this structure over here we have is the uterus for the production of eggs through the process of meiosis. Okay? With also half. Now this first zygote we have will now be the combination of these 23 chromosomes plus the 23 chromosomes from our sperm, and we will have a zygote. Now this thing will start developing, dividing mitotically over and over again. Nothing will be different about the cells, but eventually, at some point, something's going to happen with those cells, and it's going to tell them to become something. Okay? Now remember, also I keep forgetting here that testosterone is an important hormone for males. Makes us men, whoever we are, deep voice, we grow hair. All right. Female, the two hormones associated with that are very up and down throughout the cycle of a female are estrogen, which make a girl, very feminine, and progesterone. Okay, think P for pregnancy, helps maintain the uterine lining for pregnancy. So we've gotten to the point where we now have a fertilized egg. All right, it's implanted itself in the wall of the uterus. Mommy has been supplying with blood all the things it needs. That little embryo is now going to grow, divide. All the cells will be the same. But eventually, we're going to get to the point where those cells got to differentiate. They have to. All right? Remember, our bodies are made up of 200 or 300 different types of cells. Some are going to become skin cells. Some are going to become pancreatic cells, blood cells, white blood cells, red blood cells, platelets. I guess that's muscle right here. We have nerve cells here and here. We have our digestive system. We have our liver, pancreatic cells. Now, what is it inside of that ball of cells that tells that fertilized egg, that zygote, first zygote and then a ball of hundreds of cells to become all these different cells? Well, remember, inside that zygote, you have the 46 chromosomes that have all the information to become all these different cells. And they all have different jobs. Remember, for some of those cells to become pancreatic cells, think of one thing a pancreas cell has to be able to do. It has to be able to produce insulin. So the gene for insulin is turned on in the pancreatic cell. Now, that gene's not going to be turned on in the nerve cell, but the nerve cell does have it. It's just that that gene is coiled up in the DNA and will never be used, kind of like a book on a shelf that you'll never use. Now, the nerve cell is going to turn on genes that it needs. Remember, a nerve cell needs to produce a lot of neurotransmitters. So it's going to open up the genes for neurotransmitters, and those genes will be turned on to produce those neurotransmitters. Okay? Blood cells. Think of red blood cells. What do red blood cells need to produce? Well, they need hemoglobin, so they're going to turn on the gene for hemoglobin. Right? They don't need the gene for insulin. That's not their job. Okay? The digestive system over here is going to need enzymes, digestive enzymes. So in those cells, the genes for digestive enzymes are turned on. All right? So these turning on of genes, even in the early stages of embryonic development, are what's going to turn that zygote into all these different cells. And these different cells that become these are what we call stem cells. Notice they stem out in all these directions. Okay? Stemming. This is the ultimate or original stem cell. All right? Now, let's see. Now, those stem cells, as they start differentiating, are going to be what causes us to form a fetus. And here's a real live picture. Here's the fetus very early on. Okay, this all tissue up here. Let me see if I can move this around now. Now that I've made a mess. This tissue up here is in mom. This is the placenta. Okay. This is the amniotic sac. It's what's going to protect the baby. It's in a fluid. This here you see two tubes, okay? This is baby's blood in the umbilical cord. One's going to the placenta, one's going from the placenta. So here, from mommy, mommy's giving it oxygen and glucose and anything else it needs. Baby's giving it waste like CO2, urea, anything else like that. I know someone asked the question, how does a baby breathe? It doesn't need to breathe. It's got everything it needs, it gets it from the blood. One of the last things to develop in a fetus is the lungs. Doesn't need them. Why have it already? And of course we see with premature babies when they're born, that's one of the things they need to worry about is their lungs not being completely developed. So here we have, remember the uterus, here's the female's uterus. That gets very big when we see the belly of a mommy expecting. That's all uterus. There's the baby inside. This is right before it's about to be born, head down. And you notice here's the umbilical cord. Okay, that's where we get our belly button. But this area here is very important. Look how big the placenta is. This area is where everything that baby needs is going to go into its blood. So its blood supply is here. Mommy's blood supply is here. And there's an exchange. The blood does not mix. Okay? Mommy's blood and baby's blood do not mix. Remember, baby is not the same DNA as mommy. Baby is a combination of mommy and daddy's DNA. So that blood would be actually bad if it got into mommy. So what do we rely on? Diffusion. All right? Hi, do not disturb. Oh. We do not want the blood of mommy and baby mixing. That could be dangerous. Okay? Now, once again, let's see. All right, sorry, boys and girls. We know that interruptions happen in Wells Middle School quite often. And so, once again, after a baby's gestation period, a human baby would be about 9 months. Now, going on more with the placenta, once again, there's an artery and a vein. All right, this very tight-knit area here where the mommy's blood comes very, very close to baby's but never mixes. Okay? And baby gets all its nourishment from there, from mommy. Okay? There's another differentiation. Once again, here's a close-up. Right? If you have mommy's blood, what's mommy bringing? Glucose and oxygen in her blood. It's diffusing into baby's blood as it goes by there. Once again, there's this membrane right between these two. What's baby bringing? CO2 and waste going into mommy. Mommy takes that away. All right? Very important that the blood doesn't mix. But baby gets everything it needs from mommy. All right? Some things can go wrong during development if mommy doesn't do stuff that she's supposed to, like take care of herself or drinks too much alcohol or smoke. Sometimes fetal alcohol syndrome is something that can happen if a woman drinks too much, and you can see the distinctive features here of this child that occurs from fetal alcohol syndrome. Remember, whatever mommy is taking in is in her blood. You know, if she's taking in nicotine or alcohol, that can diffuse right into baby's blood. Now, once in a while, if mommy is, suffering, has HIV, is HIV positive, and that virus happens to be in the blood, it does have the possibility of going across there. They can do a lot of things, give mommy a lot of antiretroviral, so there's not much of the virus floating around in the blood. But sometimes viruses are small enough to diffuse across. If the virus is kept inside the white blood cells are too big to cross that membrane. So hopefully that will save baby from being HIV positive. They can get down to very low percentages of the baby being born with HIV. All right, I think I've gotten through a lot of this. And we talked about stem cells. And lastly, I just want to give you a little idea about if cancer cells are cells in the body that something has gone wrong and they are mitotically dividing much more than they need to. They're over dividing, but it's kind of like mitosis out of control. And here's a quick video.
This animation shows in shows what happens in a tumor. There's cells.
I'm going to turn that guy's voice off. But something has happened to these cells. They just don't know when to stop dividing. They divide, and unfortunately, you see a mass growing. But just like any other cell, they need blood. They need nutrients. They need minerals and water and all that. So actually, blood vessels actually grow around it. This is one point of where we're trying. See the blood vessels growing around it? If we can stop blood vessels from growing, maybe we can stop tumors from growing. Scientists are working furiously at that. And then one problem is that these, once in a while, you get a cell. Here's the blood supply moving. You get a cell that has broken off from the tumor and is now traveling through the bloodstream and will end up somewhere else where it will squeeze out of the blood. There it goes into other tissue and begin to divide also. Obviously, that's a very dangerous thing, the cancer spreading throughout the body. Okay? So that's it for my little review. I'm sorry. I'm missing one more thing. This is my first time doing this. So some other things that can be done with some reproductive technology. If two individuals, a man and a woman, are trying to have kids, they may go to a fertility clinic, and the woman would, they would take some eggs from the woman. Okay, here's a bunch of eggs. And from her husband or whoever it was, they would take some sperm, and in a dish, in vitro, means in glass, okay, they would unite the sperm and the egg, and hopefully they would create several viable or working embryos. Let's say they produce 3 or 4. They will take these 3 or 4, which are basically zygotes, and maybe they've divided a bit, and they will implant them into mommy's uterus. And hopefully at least one of them will develop into a full baby. Maybe 2, maybe 3. This is why you hear about, especially nowadays, 3, 4 kids being born because they were going for fertility treatment and they wanted to have a child, and they ended up having 3 or 4. It's just what happens. Okay? And once again, that in a dish, that was a big deal when I was a kid. In vitro fertilization, they called it a test tube baby. Nowadays, it's just done all the time. People do it all the time. Very expensive. So I'm going to end it there. I hope this is helpful. Hopefully I get some feedback from people. Please give me some feedback. Maybe we can I can improve on it. This is my first one. So have a good night, guys, and I will see you soon. Bye.